There's a lot of unique quirks to each credit card issuer, and Capital One for sure also has a lot of unique things about them. And so today we're going to talk about 10 things that you probably didn't know about Capital One. My name is Sean, and I'm here with my co-host.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sherwin. Today on the Credit Card BS podcast, 10 very interesting things about Capital One cards. Some of these are, let's say, more niche and not really discussed. So I'm very excited to jump right in. The first one, you might know this, Capital One pulls all three bureaus, three hard pulls on Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion when you apply for their cards, unfortunately. So that's something to keep in mind if you're planning out multiple applications. Sean, isn't there a sort of trick where you could freeze one of the bureaus? Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, so your mileage may vary on this, but what I've usually done with Capital One is freeze my Experian report. And the reason being, if you freeze Experian, historically, it's still been possible to be approved for a Capital One card. And that way you only have to have 2 inquiries instead of 3, which is better. And also Experian is usually the bureau that most other banks look at. So I like to limit the amount of inquiries on them. That way, if I'm going for like Chase or Citi or something, then it's not as bad because I don't have as many inquiries on that specific report. Again, do it at your own risk, but at least for my player 2, she was able to get approved for a Venture X at least a few years ago by doing that trick.
Cool. All right. The second thing you might not know about Capital One is that their approval is quite finicky. So anecdotally, some people just can't get approved for Capital One, not because they don't have good credit, but perhaps possibly precisely because they have good credit. Capital One thinks you might not be profitable. So I think the Venture X was one great example where no one could figure out exactly what got you approved or denied. And also note that there's no reconsideration possible for Capital One. Whatever the algorithm decides is pretty much the final decision.
Yeah, it's really annoying when applying for them because, you have no recourse. You have no way to even attempt a reconsideration, really. So, it's a very, I don't know. I still am not able to get a Capital One card, unfortunately.
Yeah, we're not sure if it has to do with velocity or inquiries or there's not really any like hard rules to know. So anyway, let's move on to the third thing that you might not know about Capital One credit cards is that the cash back you earn on their cash back credit cards, for example, like their Saver One, where you're earning 3% back on dining, entertainment, and grocery stores, can actually be converted to miles if you have a mile earning card like a Venture or Venture X. And this is really awesome because you could sort of create a multi-card setup where, you have your Venture or Venture X that gives you 2x on everything, which is competitive. And then if you pair that with like a Saver One that's earning 3% cash back on dining grocery, you use that for those categories, but then that cash back can be converted into those Capital One Venture miles to be used for like transfer partners. So that's pretty neat. It puts it kind of on par with Citi and Chase in terms of having a good setup for like multipliers on frequently used categories. Now, do note this only works if you have a card that earns miles. So if you only have a Saver One, you're not going to be able to transfer those points or use them as miles.
Yeah. The next one as well that's also interesting is that if you have the no annual fee Venture One card, you can actually transfer your miles over to partners, which is really nice because for a lot of issuers like Chase or Citi, you actually need a card with an annual fee to be able to transfer the points out to partners and make the miles useful. So being able to do it with Capital One without having that is pretty nice because you could then like take your cashback earning cards, convert it into miles with your Venture One, and then use Venture One to transfer the miles out. So that is pretty nice.
Yep. Cool. Okay, the fifth thing you may not know about Capital One credit cards is that not all of their transfer partners are one-to-one. So this is something you want to be careful with. So for example, EVA transfers 2 to 1.5. In other words, 4 to 3. So 1,000 miles, Capital One miles, becomes 750 EVA miles. This is pretty bad considering Citi has a 1-to-1 transfer ratio with EVA. Additionally, Accor points transfer 2 to 1. So 2 Capital One miles becomes 1 Accor point. Accor Live Limitless is a kind of European hotel chain loyalty program, and they have like Fairmont. This I would say is pretty mid. So like Accor points are roughly fixed at 2 cents per point, subject to euro conversions and whatever. So if you transfer 2 to 1, brings you down to around 1 cent per point, which is you're not going to get outsized value with that. And then, Sean, you want to talk about choice privileges? This one is 1-to-1, but there's cash.
Yeah, this one's awful. So you can transfer to choice at 1-to-1, but this is really bad one because choice points aren't even that valuable to begin with. But also, Citi and Wells Fargo both have ratios of 1-to-2. So literally like double the ratio. So I would not ever recommend transferring Capital One points over to choice, like in virtually every circumstance.
Yeah, I mean, 1-to-2 I think is a good ratio, but like you could get pretty good value for 1-to-2 with choice. 1-to-1, which Amex does and Capital One does, I would not really consider it. Choice points frequently go on sale for less than 1 cent per piece, so you might as well just buy it there and save your points for something worth more than 1 cent per point. All right, the next thing you should keep in mind with Capital One credit cards, the sixth thing, is that you only get 0.5 cents per mile if you redeem it for cashback. That is absolutely horrible. Avoid at all costs. If you must cash out your Capital One points, or you don't want to do any research with transfer partners or whatever, at the very least, use their travel eraser feature, which allows you to redeem Capital One miles as statement credits against travel-related purchases at 1 cent per point instead.
Yeah, I totally agree. Never redeem for half a cent cashback. I mean, that's like ridiculously bad.
Yeah.
Atrociously bad. Interestingly, also another thing with Capital One, you can transfer your miles to someone else's Capital One account directly if you call in. So let's say you've got a friend with a Venture X and you want to give them your miles, you can actually do that, which a lot of issuers don't allow. They don't even have to be an authorized user. Interestingly, though, if you are an authorized user on someone else's Capital One account, you cannot transfer those miles into your loyalty account. So for example, like I'm an authorized user on my girlfriend's Venture X, and if I want to transfer those miles into my own like loyalty account, I can't do it. It has to be in her name. This has become very problematic for us when pertaining to certain airlines, such as Turkish Airlines, back before when their miles were useful, because it was like to redeem for someone else on Turkish was a total hassle, having to like call in and deal with the worst customer service known to man. But yeah, so that was a whole thing. But if I had my own Venture X, I could have solved it, but I did not, unfortunately. So that is something, yeah, very interesting. You can transfer your miles to another Capital One cardholder.
I personally prefer it this way than the authorized user way. I know you might disagree given your issues getting approved for Capital One cards, but because, for example, in my family, multiple people have Venture X's, and we'd rather get multiple bonuses that way than like, taking up a 524 slot with an authorized user. I know you could technically get around that, but it's a hassle. So, we can just transfer points freely to one another because all of us have the card, and that's great. Okay, next thing. Some business cards from Capital One report to your credit report, while others don't. It's very strange. So the cards that don't report to your Capital One report are the Spark 2% Cash Plus card and the Venture X Business card. And the cards that do report to your credit report, personal credit report, are the Spark 2% Cash card, the Spark 1.5% Cash Select card, Spark Miles for business cards. Sean, why is it relevant to us whether a business card reports to your personal credit report?
Yeah, because if it reports to your credit report, then it's going to affect your 524 status. It's going to affect your ability to get cards from other issuers. It's going to affect your velocity. So ideally, right, you don't want it to show up on your report because that means it's like a ghost card and you can just keep getting more cards, right? That's what I love like about Amex business cards is once you're an Amex customer, they don't do hard inquiries on you. Their business cards don't show up on your report. So if you get an Amex business card, it's just like free money, right? It doesn't, It's literally like a ghost card. I love it. Yeah, so that's why it's really important in this to make sure if it's going to report or not.
And also, would it affect your utilization? But do keep in mind, if you have delinquent payments, if you've been like a bad customer, basically they do report derogatory marks to your personal credit report, even if they don't initially report. So this is not a spend whenever you want, max it out kind of situation.
Yes.
Okay, the next
another one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah. Another one is that the Venture X is actually very good for car rentals. So because it comes with primary CDW, so basically like the collision damage waiver insurance, where if you get in a collision, the credit card insurance essentially acts prior to your personal insurance. That way it doesn't increase your rates. And then also it does come with Hertz President Circle, which is their top tier status. Now there's some weird quirk with Hertz President Circle where you have to like use one rental first and then it activates, which I don't love. But it is a very useful status, especially if you go to one of the lots where they have a President Circle lot. Because when you don't have to wait in the lines, right? Like when you have Hertz status, because you just like get your car and go to the gate, which is really nice. But also because at the President Circle lots, they have some pretty good cars usually. You're not going to get anything like crazy insane, but you can like book a pretty modest car and get something that's pretty nice, pretty comfortable, maybe like a big SUV, maybe like, I think there was like a Jaguar, like a BMW there before. And also you can get like discounts and upgrades. So I like it a lot.
Yeah. I think, this Hertz status is not really talked about much, but, it could represent some pretty good value if you have this card, which already pays for itself. Okay. And then our final sort of piece of information that you might not know about Capital One credit cards is that on the Venture X, which is a $395 card, it's awesome because you get free authorized users and they each all get Priority Pass. Sadly, no more Priority Pass restaurants, but still a very useful perk if you go to the airport. Plus, everyone gets Capital One Lounge access. Not only that, but the access is for the cardholder and your two guests, right? So think about it this way, like you get access plus two guests, and then each of your authorized users get access plus their two guests. So potentially bring a lot of people into lounges with just one Venture X membership if you have authorized users. And each authorized user also gets their own Hertz President Circle status, which we just talked about. I did not know that until recently.
Yeah, those are honestly like really nice perks, and it makes it like really reasonable for the price of the card, especially just compared to a lot of other like premium travel cards out there, and how like they charge for authorized users, or the authorized users don't really get all the perks. You're getting essentially all the perks here that aren't credit based for free, which is great.
Yep, awesome. So any thoughts on these things? Did you know them? Did you not know them? Leave a comment down below. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. And if you're interested in applying for any credit card, please consider using one of the links down in the description below. Greatly helps support our channel. And Sean, why don't you plug our Discord?
Yes, if you want to connect with an elite group of award travelers and credit card enthusiasts entirely for free, check out the Travel Lane Discord group at the link in the description. You will learn a ton, I promise you. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next week.